So today we're going to be making Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. So first thing you do, go to Google. I googled Obi-Wan's lightsaber. I found this nice profile image right here, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. So if you right click on the image, it's going to bring up some options. So we're going to go ahead and do save image as, and then I'm going to go ahead and name this Obi-Wan's lightsaber. Alright, and then it should be saved to your downloads folder. So let's go ahead and hop over to Fusion 360 and pull that in as a canvas. So before we do that, I want to make sure we have a size constraint. So a lightsaber should be about 12 inches tall. So I'm going to make a line on either of these upward facing planes. I'm going to go ahead and choose the one to the right. So we'll go ahead and make a line starting from the center. So choose your line tool. You can either click L on your keyboard or go up to the create section. Then we're going to click in the center and drag straight upwards. Then type 12 IN. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, but you can see that the line went way out of what I had zoomed in for. So right here it says 304 millimeters. If you double click on that, don't worry, it's still 12 inches. It's just converted it to my document settings, which is millimeters. So now I have this nice 12-inch line, so I'll insert my canvas. So go up to insert, click canvas, and then browse from your computer. Then hunt down the image we just saved and open. Then click on that same surface. So there's a few different tools we can use here with the insert canvas. So there's the corner of this little square that allows you to resize your canvas. The square itself allows you to move it around, and then the little circle allows you to rotate it. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees, then scale it up quite a bit until it can fit just perfectly with that 12-inch line. So today we're going to be using the Revolve tool. So for the Revolve tool, you need a line to spin around. So I want to make sure this line cuts my lightsaber perfectly in half. So I'm going to adjust the size until it's just perfectly that 12 inches, then get it adjusted in place. And then once we're happy and it's centered, we can go ahead and click OK. Alright, so next thing, I want to add the sketch of my lightsaber. And I want to be able to use this line, but you'll notice if I double click on it in my timeline, it happened before I added the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse those two things in my timeline. So I'll click on the sketch and then drag it before the canvas. So now if I double click into the sketch, I can actually see the lightsaber still. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to just start sketching the right profile of this lightsaber. So I'm going to ignore these kind of like little pointy things at the bottom, because we're going to come back and add those in just a second. So the amount of detail that you add here is completely up to you. I'm going to zoom in and get a good amount of detail, but it's still probably going to look good even if I didn't do this. So as we get up here to these little ridges, we're going to take a kind of different approach than just sketching it line by line. So what I want to be able to do is draw basically the first few parts of that first ridge. So maybe like 3 or 4 lines that will create that first ridge. And then I want to use a pattern tool to create a pattern and make those pieces of my drawing duplicate upwards as many times as we need those ridges. So let's go ahead and zoom in right here and select those 4 lines. So I'm going to hold down Shift while selecting these, and that's going to allow me to make multiple selections. So Shift, click, 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 click. And then now we're going to go up and choose our tool. So in the Create section, there's the patterns. We're going to choose the rectangular pattern because that's the one that allows us to move in straight lines. So if you drag that arrow upwards, you can already see your pattern starting. There will only be 3 of whatever you're working with. So there's 2 different constraints here. There's how many of the object you want. So I think there was like 9 or 10 of these. And then we can adjust the arrow to get it lined up with exactly how far we want it to be. Or you can type in numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and test a few different numbers until I get it lined up. And that's like just about where I want it. Let me modify the amount so that way they can line up properly. Alright, and that looks pretty good. I think that's lined up. So we can go ahead and click OK. And then now let's just continue our sketch from there. So I'm going to choose the line tool again, and then just keep going. Add the lines up to the top. And then at the very top, the way we'll know when we're done with our sketch is once it seals. So when the sketch seals on itself, it's going to turn blue. So if your sketch doesn't turn blue here up on this last line, it might mean that you have two sketches going on and you don't have that center line in this sketch. So if that's the case, don't stress, just go ahead and add that center line so that way it will seal the top and bottom of your sketch together. So I'll go ahead and click, and perfect. So it turned blue, and let's make sure we can select it. So I'm going to go to the select tool and then click on the lightsaber. Alright, so see, it turns blue. We're ready to roll to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and do finish sketch. So now we're back in the 3D world. We're no longer drawing things. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to the create section and then choose the revolve tool. Alright, so revolve acts, it takes a surface and then you give it an axis and it rotates that surface around the axis. So I'm going to do axis select, and then I want to select that very first line we drew. Alright, and you can see we're basically already done with the lightsaber at this point. There's just a few little details that we need to go ahead and add. So one of them is down there at the base, the pommel. We don't have those little bumps sticking out. So the way we're going to add those, we're going to make a sketch. So I'll go ahead and do create sketch, and we'll choose the same plane we've been working with. Now on this plane I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I want it to be centered. So we'll go to the create section, rectangle, and then choose center rectangle. Alright, then I'm going to click right there on the line so that way it's centered. And then this one, I don't really care about the size of it. Just estimate visually based off the ones you can see there and try and get it roughly to the right size, but the dimensions don't really matter. So once you've got it adjusted, finish sketch. Alright, and then we're going to extrude that outwards. So if you click the extrude tool here, since we only have one sketch open, it's going to assume that that's the one we want to work with. So if I extrude it out, you'll see it's automatically defaulting to cut, plus it's starting pretty far back inside of the lightsaber, so I'm going to change that. So we're going to go to the starting point and switch it to an offset. So I think probably like 0.75 inches would be a good offset or starting point. So I'm going to type in 0.75 inches for the offset, and let's look at it from the side. So you can see that's a much better starting point for our sketch. So if we drag out, it looks a lot better, but it's still cutting. So let's go ahead and switch it from a cut. So we'll switch the operation from cut to join. Alright, and then that's so much better already, but it's still not perfect, because if you look at the profile of those ones that we already have, they kind of come out at an angle a little bit. So the way we're going to add that is by changing our taper angle. So here I would guess like -20 or -25 would be a good taper angle. So let's go ahead and try -25. Looks pretty good. Alright, so next we need a few more of those objects. So I'm going to go ahead and select that little nub down here in my timeline. It's the very last thing I've done, or most recent. Then we're going to go up to create and then pattern. And this time we're going to choose circular pattern. So we're working with 3D patterns this time. So I want this to revolve around a circle. So over here I've got my object selected, then it's going to ask me what axis. I'm going to choose this circle down at the bottom, but technically you could choose any circle. And then now we're going to set the amount. So there's supposed to be 6 of these on the original lightsaber. So let's go ahead and change that number from 3 to 6. And that looks good already. So the lightsaber is basically done at this point. The last little piece we need is this on-off switch. So we're going to follow a similar process just without the pattern. So we'll create a sketch, same plane that we did before. So then let's zoom in right there. Then we'll go to create, rectangle, center rectangle. Then we'll click, line up on that line, and then we'll get it adjusted roughly to where we can visually see that's the same-ish spot as the original button. So now let's go ahead and extrude this one. So this one, we could set an offset to make it start, but this one doesn't really have that taper angle, so I think we can go ahead and just switch it to join, and it looks good enough. So look at that, we've already got an almost perfect Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber with just a few steps. So if you feel like anything's wrong, just go back in your timeline, double click on that piece in your timeline. You can edit some of the constraints or sizes, but otherwise I think it's ready to 3D print. Let's go ahead and save our model. So go ahead and click up to the save button. I'm just going to name mine Obi-Wan Lightsaber, and then save. We're done.